For me, collecting is actually a passion to object, and by collecting objects, it's actually a comfortable way for me to encounter with the peoples. And sometimes this object is an inspiration to my art project. And sometimes I feel like I build this art project around the object. It's only for the reasons that I want to show the people of my collections. Most of the times, I even find I get more pleasure when people find my collection is interesting, more than they find my artwork is interesting. And I think it's because I think collecting is a very personal thing. So when people like your collections, they are also like some kind of agree to you, like agree to your life, agree to your taste, and agree to your thinkings. I used to make some works with 3D scanning and with a 3D software. I built some 3D model things, and with the experience doing 3D scannings, I found it's really interesting that everything inside the 3D world is it's shallow, it's hollowed. And I find that it's actually everything inside 3D world is a shell because it's hollowed. And then secondly, when I'm thinking about how our modern productions, like our massive productions going, I find that actually a lot of things you have to make it's a kind of shell because it saves the materials and it's more efficiency. And so then I come to these theories or more understandings. I find that the structure of shell is a things it's continually showing in our modern day life. So that's one of the starting point. I come up with this interesting to the shells. So, and then later it's lead to the oology. These ideas in my mind for a while. It's finally makes sense because since I know this open call in Delfina in UK, and I thought, oh yes, the oology is the best place to study in UK. So I just apply, and it all makes sense in here.
With your application, which was focused on your German Shepherd dog work and that body of collection over many years, to us it fit very much how we were considering this Collecting as Practice program be. Looking at kind of objects, the history of objects, the role of objects, the stories that they tell us today. Yep. And then moving on to homology and eggs give us another kind of framework for also thinking about the colonial experience, right? Because all this stuff happened at a certain particular time, kind of in British culture. Yeah. But it also helps us to think about our relationship to the ecology, kind of to land, to the landscape, to animals. And that's a complex one. And I think that's one that we have to think about in relation to the future. So this very particular approach of homology and of eggs, yes, it's an approach that is grounded in a very real part of history. There's also something that has a metaphor to it as well, right? The notion of the egg, right? Of birth, kind of rebirth. And I think that's also partly why we're also fascinated kind of with eggs, because we all came from one, as it were.
One of the most important research spots I have is the Natural History Museum at Terrence. When I was there, the curator, Douglas, he introduced me some of the nests and eggs from Taiwan. And it was back to 1896. And you can see there's so many informations on the note of the nest and eggs. They have some Chinese characters on the note. But actually, after some study, I find it's actually maybe not a Chinese. It's more like Japanese Chinese. And just based on the story of this object, you will see so many layers. You will see the colonialized history of Taiwan, and you will see this late passions for egg collecting these oologies. In one of the nests Douglas showing me, it actually has a really unusual walls inside. So it's just a possible that if we can really prove this is actually a wall inside this nest, and then this nest can be an evidence to show the beginnings of the Anthropocene. I went to Scarborough Museum Trust. It's a museum trust in Yorkshire, and Yorkshire was famous for egg collecting, and because they have this cliff and a lot of seabirds, they were laying their eggs in the cliffs. And the Scarborough Museum Trust, they still have the old equipment for collecting eggs, and I did some measurements to the harness they used to use, and I tried to build some works with these harness, like inspired by this harness. I also take a lot of time walking inside the park. Sometimes I will have a book and then find a branch and sit and reading one chapters. Then I keep walking and then find another ground and sitting to read another chapters. And eventually I can finish one book like 2 or 3 days by walking in the park. I think the best things to have a residency in Delfina is you will have a lot of artists and you will developing a real friendship with the artists. Between the artists, we have so many like interesting conversations, and I think that is the most precious things for me in this program.